Thanks for joining us tonight, everyone. My name is Karen Ravago-Ballaret, and I'm the Director of Alumni Professional Engagement here at the UCSB Alumni Affairs Office. So all things career and connecting alums with each other and alums with students for career advice and networking and mentoring. So yeah, we've been going for a week and a half with the Gaucho Professionals Expo. We did it in person in LA last year and had planned for it to be in the Bay Area this October and moved it all virtually. So really excited to be able to offer all of these sessions to you all. Excited to have Brooke here with us today. So I'm actually, before I turn it over to her, just a couple of quick housekeeping things again. Everyone's on mute. Feel free to turn your camera on if you'd like so we can see you out there. And then as Brooke is going through her presentation, feel free to submit any and all questions that you have for her in the chat. And then when she's done with her presentation, we will get to those. So let me pull up Brooke's presentation.
And hi guys, nice to meet everybody. So excited to be doing this. Love helping other gauchos and giving as much insight as I can. So Karen, let me know if you want me to start. I can jump in.
Yes, go for it.
Perfect. Also, I included Bitmojis in this. I think it makes it a little more fun. But my name is Brooke Salyer. I'm a 2011 Gaucho grad. I majored in sociology. I played on the soccer team when I was there, and a little bit about my journey is, once I graduated, like a lot of people, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Kind of was just exploring different avenues. I knew what my strengths were and my skills. People person, I love socializing, and I kind of went in the direction of sales, and I utilized my network. I got an opportunity to interview through my dad and his network, and landed my first job, which I think most people can agree your first job isn't always the most incredible job, but you tend to learn a ton of skills, right? And you want to go after transferable skills. So I did my first job for 2.5 years, which was in kind of the medical device space, and realized very quickly that wasn't the industry I really wanted to be in, but I gave it 2.5 years. And then I decided I was going to go into tech. So a lot of my experience is tech focused. And I will say a lot of nuggets that I share with you guys will apply to all industries, but there will be some that are tech focused. So I actually got my next job. I moved to the Bay Area from Orange County on a whim. I just was like, it's time for a change. The Bay Area was popping with tech and different jobs that were geared towards younger professionals, which I thought was very exciting, right? As a young professional, getting a really awesome opportunity to go work for a startup where you can learn a lot of different skills and wear different hats was really appealing to me. So I went and worked for a recruitment agency called Betts Recruiting. I was there for about 2 years. I learned everything about the tech world, and also on top of that, got into recruiting because, I liked the sales component in my first job, but I wanted to try something new, and recruiting had a lot of different skills that I could pick up and leverage for the rest of my life. Learning how to sell yourself in an interview is something you'll always need until you retire, of course. But so learned a ton from recruiting, how to build a resume appropriately, how to interview, how to just sell yourself and market and position yourself, and just how to network in general. Those are all skills I picked up in my second job, which then ultimately landed my job at Snapchat in LA. So about 4.5 years ago, I moved to LA. I started doing in-house recruiting. I built all of our different sales, customer operations, and just business-focused teams at Snap for my first 3 years. And then this past 1.5 years, I actually moved to our partnerships team on the sales side because the skills kind of are transferable there. And it was a new challenge, learned a lot thus far about the digital advertising landscape. So it's been quite a journey, and I do want to share a lot of these helpful nuggets that I've learned over the years, because most of what I'm going to share with you guys, I didn't know when I graduated at all. And if I had known some of these tips and tricks, I'm sure I would have been in a different place at that time. So really excited to dive in here. Perfect. So diving in, I wanted to talk about resume building and LinkedIn basics. A lot of this seems very simple, but a lot of people don't actually execute like this. So if you're a recent grad, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to focus on putting your education at the top of your resume. This is something that you want to do because it checks off that box that a lot of companies are focused on. Do you have that degree? We move on to the next level, because as a recent grad, some of you are having internships, some of you aren't. You want to hone in on your most relevant and heavy hitting experience, if you will. So that is a recommendation I always look at. If I'm looking at a recent college grad's resume, I always look, okay, did they graduate? And here are some of the internships that they might have done. Or did they play a sport? Were they part of Greek life? Did they volunteer? What are the different experiences that they had? As a recruiter, you want to look for those that are well-rounded individuals. Yes, having a 4.0 GPA is awesome, but I want to know, did you go out of your way to volunteer? Did you do other things that are outside of the textbook? So those are a couple of things that we do look at for recent grads. Another piece I do like to focus on is keeping your resume short, sweet, concise, because you don't want to use a lot of filler words. You don't want to put in fluff. You don't want to include anything that isn't exactly crucial. I think a great example of that for you guys, a lot of people, once they graduate college, they still have their high school listed on there, or things that they did in high school, and at that point, it's not as relevant. 4 years in college, or any college that you attend, you learn a ton about yourself as an individual, and you're doing a lot of different activities that are different than high school, so you don't necessarily need to put that on there. It's almost like writing an essay for some of your classes as well, where you're trying to just get to that 5-page mark sometimes, and you start using filler words. Don't do that with your resume. If you go over 1 page, especially if you're junior in your career, it's kind of a turnoff to recruiters. I'll just kind of say that. On top of that, for tech industry, a lot of folks spend a lot of time on a cover letter. We don't look at those a lot of the time. I will just be completely transparent. Focus on the core meat and potatoes of your actual resume. That's where you want to spend your time. On top of that, you want to tailor your resume to the job or industry that you're looking at. A lot of people do that with their objective in their at the top of their resume. They'll talk about, I'm a professional looking for this type of role. I can't tell you how many times as a recruiter I have seen a resume that has a different objective than what we're hiring for, or what even our industry is looking for, which is one of those minute details that actually rules people out. So make sure you keep that updated. It can take a little bit more work if you're applying to a number of different jobs across different industries, but I promise you, being really focused on those details are crucial. Keeping your LinkedIn up to date is something that I cannot stress enough. Every time I've looked at an application when I was on the recruitment side of Snap, I always went to look at your LinkedIn, always went to see, okay, do they have a photo? Is it, somewhat professional photo? When they break down their jobs, does it match what their resume looks like? A lot of times there's discrepancies. So we try to put them together and try to make it make sense. And when you have 1,000 resumes and profiles to go through for one job, you're a little bit crunched on time. So you want to make sure your LinkedIn mirrors your resume, and you have enough detail in your profile to really explain what you're doing in your job or in your internship or whatever sport you did or club you joined. Keywords are crucial. And this is something that I know a lot of people aren't really familiar with, but as a recruiter, when I go searching for people's LinkedIn profiles, I always type in keywords. So if your profile doesn't have that keyword, you're not going to populate in my search. And that's a little bit problematic, right? If you're looking for a job in my industry. So I think an example of this would be I was hiring for an account executive on the sales side of Snapchat. And I would look for people who had specific experience. So digital advertising is a keyword, or if it's a specific book of business or vertical, like let's say you work with entertainment clients and that's what we're trying to hire for, I'll put that in the keyword. So always put in keywords for that industry, and even particularly for that job, if you want to stand out. And you'll know what those buzzwords and keywords are by looking at the job description as well. So that's just kind of a little bit of insight into how to populate in a search when a recruiter is searching for a candidate. That is also something when I'm going through our applicant tracking system internally, I can type in keywords and it'll show me just those resumes. So that is one way to really stand out and get your resume seen in a massive pile of resumes. And I would say even more so during the COVID era right now, there are so many applicants for every job. It's very competitive right now, which I know is a pain point for everybody. So making yourself stand out, that is one way to easily put yourself in that competitive grouping. So make sure you do those things. And then keep personal details to a minimum. I know people will add these to resumes and to their LinkedIn. And yes, we do want to know about you as an individual. Some people will put in a lot of information about themselves and things they like to do outside of work. I would recommend kind of staying away from some of those things. If you're just trying to fill space or whatnot, those are some of the things that you can share when you hop on a call with a recruiter. If they say, hey, tell me about yourself. What do you like to do? Things like that. And then lastly, I can't stress this enough, proofread. The amount of times I see misspelled errors on a resume or LinkedIn is crazy, and that probably rules out 50% of candidates from the get-go. So be very cautious and just pay attention to those details. And I think it'll take you kind of through that first step of screening that recruiters go through. Awesome. Next slide. Perfect. So applying for jobs it's like a job itself, just so you know. And it takes a lot of work when you already do have a job and you're employed. So just know recruiters understand that. And we're very appreciative of the time that you donate to interviewing. First thing I will say during this COVID era is be open and flexible. I would say that in general as well. I guess taking a step back, it's very normal and okay to be unsure of what you want to do as a next job. All the jobs I had, I didn't know I was going to land in them, and they just kind of happened. So be open to exploring a lot of different options, be flexible. Sometimes you have to take that initial step back to take a bigger step forward, and that's okay. I know it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. If it's a compensation cut for a job you really want, just know in the long term, that is something that you're going to be happier with. And we've all done it to a certain extent at some point in our careers. So that's okay. And the other thing is, when you are looking to start in a new job, if you don't really know what you want to do, look for something that is going to have transferable skills. So a sales job, a recruitment job. Those are two I can speak to, because you're going to learn skills that'll transfer to almost any job you take. So I would just highlight that if you're going to be open, make sure some of those traits transition over. Next, reaching out to your network first. Once you have your resume built and you're going out into market, utilize your network. I don't care if it is your, cousins, brothers, friend, whatever it is, try to utilize your network and build those relationships. Every job I have had is based on who I have known, and I've built a solid relationship to get me in the door. My first job, I utilized my dad's network. My second job, I utilized one of my friend's ex-boyfriends. And then my most recent one at Snap, I actually had a previous coworker that got my foot in the door just to get an interview. And then moving over to the sales side, just as an example, the job I moved into, you're supposed to have 10 years of digital advertising experience, and I had 0. And it was because of the relationship I built with that internal manager, and I got that opportunity. So leverage your relationships. They will take you a long way. And also, on that note, those that are referred into a company have a much higher chance of actually getting hired. And I know that doesn't seem necessarily fair, but as a recruiter, you have a ton of resumes come through from external candidates. And when someone internally says, hey, I have a great person you need to talk to, and they have similar experience to what we're looking for, you're going to take that call. And that's just the truth of it. And that's what's hard about these times, which is why I'm going to give you some other tips and tricks of how to really stand out. Looking at job boards, there are so many different job boards out there. LinkedIn is a great place to find a ton of different jobs. One thing I will say at Snap, we keep all of our job postings so up to date on LinkedIn. The second we write one and put it on our website, it goes to LinkedIn. Just know that a lot of the tech companies do that. And I think just a lot of companies in general do that, but we keep ours like very up to date, which is great. Indeed, Monster. If you're looking for tech specific jobs, Built in LA, it's actually called Built In, but they have it for every big city. So you can do, Built in San Francisco, Built in LA, Built in New York, Austin, you name it. And it'll list any job that's within the tech world. And you can apply immediately, and they make it really easy. So there are just a ton of different websites you guys can leverage, and I highly recommend doing that. On top of that, I know a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth with agency recruiters, and sometimes you can get ones that aren't that great, to be honest, and they're just, trying to make a buck. If you find one, I think it's 50-50, but if you find someone that was like myself who actually was really focused on finding the right job for the right person, you're going to be in great hands. If you find someone who isn't that person, they're still going to open the door for you to a number of different companies. So you're going to be able to give someone your resume, give them the pitch on yourself, and they're going to go do the selling of your resume on behalf of you to get your foot in the door at these companies. So I would highly recommend utilizing agency recruiters, especially right now, because they will get your foot in the door at a number of different companies. So they are pretty great. And if you guys have questions on different recruiting agencies that maybe I recommend, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to help or give a list. Looking at how you can connect on LinkedIn, I know this is something that a lot of people do all the time. I've done it where I reach out to people at a company that I'm interested in. But the thing I would note there, for example, I get hit by hundreds of direct notes on LinkedIn a day in a week by individuals looking and interested in jobs. There are those that stand out by keeping their notes short and sweet. Also, I will say anybody that starts their first subject line or first sentence with, hey, I'm also a gaucho, I will always look at that note. And I think that would apply if you find common ground with any recruiter that you want to message. Or even if you message someone that, let's say, you're looking for a sales job at Snap, and you go look up a sales manager at Snap, and you send them a message, try to find common ground. Like if you guys have, you follow similar accounts, or you put something on your LinkedIn's that are similar, try to find common ground, because people are more inclined to talk to you if you can find that. And they'll have I hate to say it, natural bias towards those that they can relate to. I would say apply, keep the door open to a number of different jobs. That's going to be super crucial for COVID, the COVID era. But in general, I think it's great to interview at a number of different companies. A couple of key things there. Even if, let's say Snap is your only company you want to work for because you've heard great things or whatever it might be. Don't only go for Snap. You want to go for Snap. Let's say you want to go for Facebook, Google, Twitter. Keep your options open, because things you're going to learn during the interview process, a company isn't everything it seems. You might meet with people that turn you off so much to that job because either, they don't come off as natural leaders that you want to surround yourself with, or, you're not going to learn anything from those people. you learn a lot about a company, and you are also interviewing that company for a home. So you're going to be vetting out, that group of people you meet with for interviews as much as they're vetting you out. So you'll learn a lot about a company, and a lot of the time you're going to be turned off to what you find out. So I would say keep your options open, apply and interview to a number of different companies, because you'll be surprised what you learn. The one thing I will say also in terms of pandemic is the process will take a lot longer. Just to give you a little bit of a breakdown of what the process usually looks like for interviewing from a recruitment standpoint, whenever we have an interview with the candidate, we'll set up time either that day or within the next 48 hours to have an overview and get everybody's feedback live in a room. And then we'll make a decision whether or not we move forward on that candidate. That can happen that day, can happen within 48 hours after that, just based on that panel's scheduling. So that's why sometimes it can take longer. And with pandemic, people's schedules are way more hectic. So it can take longer. So just keep that in mind. If you don't hear back right away, it's not because they don't want you. It's just because they probably haven't debriefed yet. So be patient. Awesome. Next slide. Cool. How to nail your interviews. These are some helpful tips and tricks that honestly I didn't know when I graduated. I didn't realize how to leverage a lot of the resources at my fingertips. For starters, always ask your recruiter what to expect in the interview. Your recruiter is going to want to help you out as much as possible, as much as they can. So always ask them what you can anticipate. A lot of them will give you a schedule. They'll give you a little bit of insight, but if you ask them, they'll probably give you more insight than they would if you didn't ask. So always ask what to expect. There are no stupid questions, so keep that in mind. Also, research the company beforehand. And when I mean research the company, look at, the funding for that company. Are they in a good, are they profitable? Are they not? Are they looking for more funding? Are they in a good state? What does their leadership look like? Is there anything in the media that is covering, maybe their leadership's having some issues? It's from a Google search, you can really pull up a ton about that company and their leadership. Have they had any new exciting product launches? I think for Snap in particular, the candidates that stand out most to me that blew every other candidate away were those that did research on our company, saw that we had new products that launched, they want to talk about it, ask questions about it. Those that talked about our leadership or our, values, things like that. That stands out way more to me than, your ordinary candidate. So that's something that you can do that will separate yourself from anybody else in the process. Researching your interview panel on LinkedIn is also important. It's going to be very helpful for you for a couple reasons. First off, you want to know who you're talking to and the different positions that they are in. It is highly unlikely you will meet with people from the same position for every interview. You're going to get different perspectives from either someone who's going to be a peer, someone who's a manager, someone who's a director, someone who's on a cross-functional team that you would work with in some capacity. So research them, and that's going to be really helpful also for one of my later bullet points. But you're going to tailor any of your questions towards those individuals. So you should not be asking the same questions to someone who's a peer versus a manager. You're going to want to get different inputs, right? You're going to want to know what the manager's management style is, right? How do you goal your team? What are the KPIs that you're looking to base my performance off of? And then for a peer, you're going to ask, okay, well, what does your day-to-day look like? How do you find success in your role? What are some of the challenges that you run into? And a lot of the times that peer is going to be pretty open and honest about challenges of the role. They're going to be very, very open and forthcoming. So that's why it's helpful to research your panel on LinkedIn prior. Position yourself in the market as sought after. What I mean by that is, this is actually one of the insights from a recruitment mindset when I was recruiting. Those candidates that told me they were interviewing at some of our competitors immediately just kind of went up a step in my book. And the reason for that is because every company wants someone that has competitive skill set that is, sought after by other companies, right? You don't want to tell people get caught up in the idea of, oh, I want this company so bad. If I tell them I'm not interviewing anywhere else, maybe they're more inclined to like want me as well. And that is actually false. People want to know that you're interviewing elsewhere. You're smart by keeping your options open, and you're more sought after. So I would tweak it. Whether or not you are interviewing elsewhere, always tell a recruiter you're interviewing elsewhere, because it is going to make you seem more sought after. Just a little nugget of insight from a recruitment mindset. Preparing a 1-minute pitch on yourself that is concise and to the point is key. You know, I always ask people, so like, tell me about yourself, because it's open-ended. I want to see where people take me on their journey and what they highlight. What I will say is going to be crucial for a lot of people is really highlighting your skills. And what I mean by that is, when I graduated, I knew that I can sell myself in a sales role or a recruitment role by talking about my competitive set. I'm a very competitive person by nature, and I'm always wanting to, you know, close a deal or, you know, get someone hired, things like that. So I was able to really sell myself as a team player and someone with a highly competitive edge. And that is what kind of sold it for some people, especially for a sales role. So figure out what your skill is and what your trait is that you can really sell. Because when someone says, and I'm not a big fan of these questions, but like, what is your strength or what is your weakness, right? A lot of people will ask those questions, but for your strength, figure out what that is and really lean into it. And really just, you know, weave that into your pitch on yourself. But keep it short and concise. Try not to exceed a minute on that. Awesome. Asking questions and tailoring your questions to each interviewer. I already mentioned that, but I do want to highlight the importance of asking questions. A great example of this, you know, before I got into recruiting, I started interviewing at a ton of different companies, and, you know, a couple times I just didn't ask questions, which it seems so just not smart of me to do that. But I didn't know that, you know, I should have been grilling everyone with all these questions. And I didn't realize, you know, I thought they were just interviewing me, not me interviewing them for my next professional home. So, and I get a lot of candidates that actually do not ask any questions, or they ask questions about our company culture, things that aren't really like intellectually curious questions. I would make sure you always have some questions around that you're going to ask. Don't speak negatively about previous employers or even previous experiences. Try to tailor that. If you didn't have a good experience, try to position it in a way of where it was a learning experience for you. Try not to talk negatively. That is always something that recruiters are turned off by, even though we've all had a negative experience. So just a negative insight there. Lastly, be yourself. So many people stress out so hard for interviews, and then they just turn into this robot who you feel like you have to be this person that you're not. But be yourself. People want to get to know the real you, especially from a recruiter standpoint. It helps me sell you more internally, right? Like, hey, this guy is really awesome. He's really energetic. He's outgoing. He has, you know, desires to do this. I think he'd be great for this role. So just be yourself. And I think that's going to take you a far way through the process. Awesome. Cool. Post-interview protocol. This is pretty straightforward. Always, always, always send a follow-up thank you note to your interviewers as well as your recruiter for taking the time. That goes a long way with people. I have some teams that have not moved forward on an awesome candidates just because they haven't followed up. It is a preference for a lot of people. The other tip I would say, when you do send a follow-up thank you note, tailor it to each interviewer and your conversation. So keep it short and sweet, but put something that you took from your conversation. Let's say maybe you talked to somebody about, I don't know, that you guys like to golf, or something that you guys talked about in your interviewer. I apologize, our phone's going off. Going to turn that off. But try to put something in there that was a little bit more personal to that specific interviewer in your note, because it shows they'll compare notes and thank you notes. And if it's all generic, it's not as great. But that's just something I would say. And then for the recruiter, when you send a follow-up thank you note to them, I would always finish with, please let me know what next steps look like. And, you know, what I can, if there's anything else I can provide to you to get to the next step. Something along those lines, to where it forces them to give you what that next step is, and they'll get back to you. If you don't hear back, give it a little bit of time, especially with COVID, but always check in with your recruiter if you haven't heard anything in 48 hours. That gives them enough time, you know, initially to sync up with the team, hopefully figure out what next steps look like. And if they don't have an update, they'll let you know. They'll just be like, hey, I'll get back to you once we do have one. And then for you guys, give it another 48 hours. I just say 48-hour rule is standard for checking in. That way you're not coming off too aggressive, but it's just enough to kind of poke them for that next step. Cool. Some other key takeaways for you guys. Learn how to sell your skills. As I already mentioned, find that one or two things that you can highlight and really sell yourself in an interview. And, you know, interviewing is repetitive. You should be able to nail it after your first couple, right? Practice interviewing, and you'll have, you know, some of the same responses. You want to keep it the same, you keep it tight, and you'll be good to go. When recruiters, or when you reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn, like I said, try to find common ground and put that in your note, but don't hesitate to reach out to people on LinkedIn. Sometimes that's going to be your in, or if that's not the right person you're reaching out to, they'll connect you to somebody. So that networking is going to be important. Another tip I do have to say, recruiters will always ask you what you expect from a compensation standpoint. Have an answer prepared for that. Don't pigeonhole yourself by giving an exact number. A lot of people will say, I just expect to make what the market rate is. And I think that keeps the door open. If you do have a number in mind that is like your baseline, like I can't make lower than this number, always inflate that by, you know, 10, 15%, because at worst, they're just going to say no. At best, they're going to give you likely what you're asking for. So, or just underneath that, which is what you're looking for, sorry. But always have something prepared. You don't want to be caught off guard, because recruiters can use some of that against you later in negotiation processes. Make sure you exude confidence during your interview. A lot of people are hesitant, and you can tell when you're in that interview. The fake it till you make it thing really is a thing. So even if sometimes you don't know what you're talking about, if you say it with confidence, people are on board. So if a recruiter asks you a question or something that you're not really prepared for or ready for, just say it with confidence, and you know, you're kind of good to go. So that is a tip. Just don't come off nervous, and I think you'll be good. Lastly, during a pandemic, stay positive, be flexible, and don't get discouraged. You know, there's going to be a lot of no's before you get that yes, and that's with just all walks of life. Don't let it be a setback. Learn from every experience and take that next step forward. So that's the end of my presentation.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Brooke. That was a lot of really good information, getting that hand clap emojis out there. So folks, don't be shy. Feel free to type some questions into the chat. While we're waiting, Brooke, can you share a little bit more about the recruiting agency perspective? I know when I've walked around at the UCSB Career Fair, I've seen a couple of the recruiting agencies there, and I'm not super familiar with how exactly it all works. So can you share some of that?
Of course. So recruiting agencies can be very useful. So what the process looks like is you go to a recruiting agency. I'll use my previous company as an example, Betts Recruiting. They focus on all like tech sales recruiting, right? They do some marketing and some other stuff, but for the most part, that's their bread and butter. A candidate would come to me and say, hey, here's my resume. I'm looking for, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I always used to ask candidates, tell me the top 3 things that are non-negotiable for you, because everyone has non-negotiables. I want to make sure I'm finding the right job. And every agency recruiter is working with either 10 companies or up to 50 companies. So they're working with a vast, landscape of different businesses. And what they're going to be able to do is narrow that down and be able to put, let's say 10 companies in front of you, and they'll give you the rundown on every company. They'll tell you about, how they got their start, their leadership, core things you should know, and highlight some of the great benefits of it. And then you get to be the decision maker on, okay, I want to interview here. I don't want to interview here. You get to pick that, but they're putting options in front of you. And they're also going to give you tips and insights of how to position yourself better in market. So if you come to them with a resume, they're going to probably have some insights for you on things to tweak for the companies they work with. But they're the ones that are doing the hard work for you, honestly. And I know a ton of recruiting agencies that are going to be great, for any industry. And I just say leverage that, let them put in the legwork for you, and they're going to tee up those interviews. Like, they will literally set them up for you. So it's kind of a no-brainer in this market, especially, to let someone do that for you.
And how does the process work in terms of hiring someone at a recruiting agency, or like, when do you pay? How does that all work?
You don't pay.
Ah, okay.
So how that works, you don't pay for an agency recruiter. They get paid by the company to hire the best talent. So generally speaking, they are making a percentage off of your hire. So you don't have to pay anything. They're literally going to tee everything up for you. And it's great.
Okay, awesome. So a couple of questions in the chat about LinkedIn. So when sending a LinkedIn message to someone at a company you're applying for, how would you go about choosing that person to connect with?
Great question. So there's a couple of things you can do. And what I really recommend, try to find a recruiter that's on, sometimes they'll be really specific on their recruitment profile. Like on mine, I have it that I recruited for business and sales focused jobs. A lot of recruiters will be pretty specific. So wherever you think that job falls, whether it's on like, we call it technical recruiters that focus on like engineering, and then business recruiters and corporate recruiters that focus on pretty much everything else. So try to find the recruiter or recruiters that fall into either of those categories on the job that you want, and message them and say, hey, so-and-so, I noticed you're also a gaucho, would love to connect. I saw this specific job on your jobs page, would love to talk about it. Keeping it that short and sweet is awesome, because you're pointing out and giving direction on the job you're looking for. And if they're not the right recruiter, they're going to kick you over to the right recruiter. So you're being specific, you're short and to the point, and that's crucial. The other thing I would say, if you can find someone from the team in which that job is a part of, like a manager, sales manager, whatever it might be, you can also send them that same message, right? Say, hey, I don't know, we're on similar grounds here, like you like bowling or whatever. And I don't know, connect with them on that level, and then just say, I saw this job posting, I'm very interested. And they'll probably get back to you, because they're getting less messages also than recruiters are. So I would message both if you can, but that's how I would tailor your message.
Great, that's a good tip. And piggybacking off of that, for reaching out directly to people via LinkedIn, can this hurt the application process if they perceive it as annoying or as trying to go around the application process?
Most of them, no. I will say most recruiters know. You might get the one-off person that's like, ugh, no, turned off by it. But most people appreciate that, that drive and the extra mile. I did that when I looked at Snap, to be completely transparent. I reached out to 5 people I was connected to. None of them responded. Just so people say no and they won't respond. And it was that 6th person I reached out to that got my in, and that was someone I was connected to from my previous job. So it might take a while before you get that in, but definitely try. Most people are not going to be turned off by it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Are recruiters allowed to verbally ask you what you make at your current job in California?
Great question. I actually had this in my presentation. I took it out. Wasn't sure if there are a number of questions people cannot ask you. Recruiters it's illegal to ask you what you're making. which is why recruiters will phrase it now. And I remember when we made this change, because my first 6 months at Snap, that was legal. And so I'd ask people, okay, what do you make? And then what are your expectations? I think those are two very different questions. But no, it's illegal for them to do that, along with any questions around, and a lot of recruiters are doing this, especially during COVID. Do not let them trick you. They're asking very personal questions like, what's your family situation like? Like, do you have kids? Things like that. Questions around gender, any family situations, any questions that are personal, even asking, like, where did you go? Like, where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school? They are not allowed to ask you those questions. So if someone does, figure out a good response to politely decline, but it is illegal.
Okay, good to know. What other tips do you have for tapping into the hidden job market?
Oh, hidden job market. I mean, that's a tough one, hidden job market. I would just say when you're looking at different jobs, yes, you have all the traditional job sites. There are going to be ones specific to industry. Try to find those. Like I said, Built in LA is tech focused. There's going to be some like that for, I guarantee, every industry. Try to figure out what that is. Dig deep in your Google searches. But Built in LA is actually something I've talked about with a number of people in my industry, that even people who I've had to tell them they didn't get the job at Snap, and I tell them, hey, go look at this website. Almost every person I talked to about it didn't know existed. And it's very niche. It is very focused on that industry. So I would just say, dig deep in Google. Don't necessarily go for the top searches that populate. We know a lot of those are paid for. And I would just say, really do your homework. There's a lot of websites out there that will help you really tap in there. And then using a lot of those tips and tricks I said about connecting with people on LinkedIn, the recruiters. I would say job fairs too are going to be great, because a lot of people don't attend them, and you're going to have that foot in the door. I know it's tough right now with COVID. I think they're probably doing a lot of virtual things. But I will say, like, when I was at Bets Recruiting, we used to host our own interview happy hours for our clients. And we would have candidates show up. It was a happy hour. You got to go around, introduce yourself to people in the room. And a lot of our clients would hire people on the spot. So networking, getting in like that is very helpful.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Elizabeth. So for those who are trying to make a career change, what's the most impactful thing we can do on LinkedIn, on your resume, et cetera, to convince recruiters that we can be competitive candidates too, even though we may not have the exact job experience listed on the job listing?
That's going to be really hard regardless. And this is actually where I would say taking that initial step back to take a bigger step forward. It is a lot about who you know, because those people are the ones that are going to give you more of that ear for you to talk about your skill sets and how to sell it. It's really hard to sell yourself on a piece of paper if you're changing industries. I'm just going to say that straight up. I've done it. I've gone through it, and it is really hard. So, from my first job to my second job, I didn't have any recruitment experience. I didn't have any tech experience. I had never worked with a Mac computer or LinkedIn. I literally started everything from scratch, and I had to take a cut on my compensation to do that. So I would say, try to put buzzwords and keywords in your resume, even if it's just in your objective of, I'm looking for this job because of, I'm competitive in this, I'm a team player, and yada, yada. There are certain things recruiters will look for. Being a team player is crucial. I always look for that, because when anyone says they're competitive, are you going to stab people in the back to get to that next level? Are you going to be a good team player? So it's how you position it. But if you are looking to transition into a new career, it is doable. It's going to be more challenging, but try to put keywords in there and get in touch with the right people. Try to reach out to the right people on LinkedIn. Someone is going to read your message and give you that opportunity. I've done that for a number of recent grads that have come through that are like, hey, I majored in engineering and I want to come do this. And it's completely different than what you studied, right? Versus what you're going to do. but if you give them a little bit of an opportunity, they can excel. So it really depends on who you reach out to, but some of those tweakings of your LinkedIn, your resume, to make it more geared towards that industry are going to be very helpful. I hope that helps.
Great, thanks. Can you give an example of how to decline answering a personal question if asked?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the personal question. I think, let's say someone asks me, I don't know, let's say someone asks me if I have kids at home, which is illegal. Also, just highlighting that again. The way I would approach it is just saying, you know, hey, I appreciate the question. My personal life, I don't think is applicable to this job. Something along those lines to kind of steer it back to them of, hey, I don't think it applies to the job. Interviewers are really only supposed to ask you questions that are questioning you about the job and, you know, the company, right? So I would just say, appreciate the question. I don't think it's applicable to my skill sets. More than happy to answer any other questions that you might have. So kind of put the ball back in their court. But I would say, like, that's the best way I would answer that question. And there are different conditions you can do for that, but you know.
All right, folks, we still got a few more minutes. Keep them coming. While we're waiting for another question, Brooke, can you share, especially for anyone that's job searching right now and might not be finding exactly what they thought they were looking for because things are so crazy with COVID, or just feel like they need to take something just to take something. So can you share just a little bit more again about kind of what you were talking about with transferable skills and getting something out of every experience and how to sell that in your next job search?
Absolutely. So, it is tough to get a job right now. We all know that. It's not a secret. And even aside from COVID, it is challenging to get a job, and how to sell yourself. I would say always find a job. Like, don't necessarily take a job just to take a job if it doesn't meet some of the criteria you're looking for. But the most important things I would say that you should be looking for in a job is, am I going to learn something from this job, right? Like, am I going to learn some skills? If it's a customer service job, you're probably going to learn a lot. You're going to learn how to deal with people, and a lot of them can be unhinged and really test you. So my first job was exactly that. And so, I would say take a job that you're going to learn something from. If you have absolutely maxed out all your opportunities and you just need a job, yes, you can take a job, right? But what I would stay away from is job hopping. Mm-hmm. So in a time like right now, if you just need to make that income, yes, take a job, just to bring that home. But what I would say is, as you go through, this COVID experience, the next job you take, try to make that stick. The hardest thing for recruiters is to hire someone who spends, their career hopping from one job to the next. And what that looks like for a recruiter is basically, if every year you're in a new job, that doesn't look great. Even if you have the best reasons for those job hops, it does not look great. So I would say, in the time of right now, if you need to take a job and you have to support your family, yes, do it. But try to make sure there is something you're going to learn, right? Some transferable skill, like how to sell, how to customer service and experience. Like, customer service is everything. I think we can all agree, if you go buy something from somebody and there's something wrong with it, you go back and customer service is awful, it's not a good experience. So, like, make sure you're picking up some sort of skill as you take a job.
Great. That was actually going to be my follow-up question, was one of the ones about job hunting. Let me see. Oh, good. Carla's got some additional advice in the chat as well, in terms of getting involved with professional associations, volunteering, volunteering with nonprofits or your church, and doing informational interviews, gathering information. So I think that's actually a great place for us to end. So Brooke, I'm going to let you give one final parting thought, and then I will leave folks with some things to chew on and take away.
Definitely. I would just say, as you're job searching, keep going. You're going to take some hits through the process. That's just how it goes. There's going to be some no's, but take that, learn it, and keep rolling, and you will find the job that you love. It might not be that first job right out of college, but you will get there, and just be patient. Patience is key.
Definitely. So yeah, folks are inquiring about recording. So yes, we're recording. Give us a few days. This is the 10th one we've done in the last 8 days. So we're just doing a little bit of editing and, you know, putting some stuff together before we get them all uploaded. But if you are signed up for Gaucho Network, we'll send something through there to let you all know when all of the recordings are being posted. Brooke is not signed up for Gaucho Network yet, but she's going to be. So that's a great place to find her afterwards. You know, as she was mentioning, you know, LinkedIn and finding other Gauchos. So Gaucho Network is our UCSB exclusive kind of LinkedIn type platform where everyone in there is a Gaucho, and they've specifically said, please reach out to me. I want to help. I want to help make connections, give career advice. I can take a look at your resume if you're interested in this industry. So Gauchos are out there ready and willing to help out, especially in this really challenging time. People are really wanting to make sure that they are giving back to the community. If they know about job postings, they'll put things in there as well. So, you know, we talked about informational interviews and doing your research on companies. So you can go in there and look up if there are any alums working at any specific companies that you're interested in. If you're going to grad school, if anybody went through that program. There's about, I want to say, a little bit over 6,000 Gauchos in there right now. It's probably about 80% alumni, and everybody said, yes, please reach out. So definitely between LinkedIn and Gaucho Network, those are some great ways to connect with your fellow alumni. So we will be, again, sending out information about the recording. You'll be getting a follow-up survey. So we would love to hear from you, as we continue to do more virtual programming. Let us know what would be helpful for you. And yeah, Brooke, one love thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, feel free, everyone, add me on LinkedIn, utilize my network if you need. I'm more than happy to make connections. Love to help out all my fellow Gauchos. So feel free to add me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Everyone out there in the virtual universe, help me in thanking Brooke for joining us today. These are really great tips. It's a really challenging time right now. So it's good to have some advice from the other side of the table so folks know kind of what's happening on the recruiter side of the house. So thank you so much, Brooke, and hopefully we will see you all at our next virtual career event.